And here we go. Stay there. Okay. Hey, hey there, another live stream, Guitar by Night. It's 20 to midnight around here. So, I got my green guitar, the Twangs, and I'd like to talk a little bit about everything involved soloing in rock and roll, and basically ideas, where do they come from, how to practice, how to develop your own ideas, because there are basically two ways of getting into it. First is listening and complete immersion and just getting general vibe of the style by listening to everyone across every eras, but this can very easily and shortly lead you to complete insanity. I know, I've been there. Anyway, so this is one way, just getting general shape. of how soloing in this style can look like. The other thing is to cross it with certain knowledge coming from different directions. So by studying, learning, analyzing, and then throwing it all away, or maybe putting it all in a melting pot and getting those elements that feel natural. So without getting too much into intricacies of theory that would describe it, we can just have a look at the oh yeah, absolutely, Bill, great to see you. So yes, absolutely, solo on Get Back, played by Lennon, is possibly, I mean, it's just incredible how everything is right in there. I mean, it just feels like there is nothing else that could go in there, which is possibly the best thing that you can achieve as someone who comes up with a part for a song. Not only because it's been there for years and years and years, but it just feels so smooth. It feels so right. And yes, of course, I watched Get Back the movie. These were like the best 9 hours of my life recently, and it was pretty much it was borderline spiritual experience for me, and it answered some questions that I had for like over 30 years, you know, since I first heard these tunes, and I was wondering where they came from, you know, how they come up to be and everything. So yeah, of course, there'll be some of that. I mean, it's all song related. It's all comes from music, not from a technical standpoint. I mean, we can use theory or technique just to break things down, but that's not where it comes from. And how to get this sort of creative vibe and how to discover certain things. Oh yeah, absolutely. It was absolutely brilliant. So what I really like doing is either get some sort of movement, some sort of backing. I like using loop pedals for practicing. Sometimes I use some of the backing tracks that are on my channel that I can slow down if I'm working on particular song, because in this sort of rock and roll context, this movement from, you know, across blues progression from 1 chord to 4 chord to 1 chord 5 chord, it's there, it happens, it leads us very nicely and gives plenty of possibilities. We can either follow the movement of the chords, we can deny it by playing the same thing on both chords, and as long as we do it in an intentional manner, it can sound great. We can stick to one note, we can apply rhythms. I mean, there are plenty of things, but again, when I think about that, whenever I play, I tend just to live through what I'm playing and not really try to be analytical about that, because otherwise it will just sound like putting some parts together and they won't look like they belong in like this same musical idea. They just look like they're patched or welded together, and you got all the seams, you know. So what I would start with, something very easy. I'm gonna practice very slowly. I'm gonna come up with my ideas as fast as I can chase them. I won't let them take over from what I can follow. And because it's late night and my mind is not in the usual space where it should be for high workloads and performance and everything, and at the same time I'm monitoring 2 level meters in 2 different spots and try to fit in a frame which camera is here, but I need to look there for all the numbers that are on the screen. So it's a mess, and my rounding is messy and all. So I got a loop pedal that blinks at me. So yeah, to clear the memory. Okay, so let's start with something very, very simple. I'm gonna play a low speed version of a single A chord groove that will allow me to put my musical phrases that I'm gonna discover or put together, and it will just give me certain grounds and point of reference how my ideas work in the context of harmony. So I'm gonna do something like that. Okay, so this is my A major A6 chord. We think of it as a major for now. And I'm gonna just use, that was terrible. I'm gonna loop it one more time because it bothers me. Okay, one more time. Okay, first thing, A major chord, I'm gonna play just A major chord notes in different order, double stops, single notes, just to see where can I take just a single A major triad in different inversions. So I'll start with the familiar one here. 5th fret, bar across 2 first strings and 3rd string, middle finger. Okay, another inversion because it sounds slightly stale. This here, it's 9th fret on G string, 10th on B string, and 9th on 1st string. And depending on where I'm coming from in terms of different inversions, I can use either this fingering, or this fingering, or this fingering, or whatever feels right. You can play bar and just add finger, or these fingers, whatever works for you. Okay, 3rd inversion here. It's actually not an inversion, this is actually a root position. So this is on 3rd, this is on 5th, this is on root. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how we call them. This is this shape. It's like A major here in the 1st position, 12th fret, it's higher. We don't need to care how these things are called. Basically, they're all A major. They're just have different order of notes. So it's exactly the same cake. Sometimes it's upside down. So one trick that I'm doing here, I'm sliding up half step below the chord. So from these 3 inversions, I mean 3 positions, 3 inversions and 1 root position chord, I already have 6 possibilities. And I'm plucking 3 first strings at all time. I didn't even split the chord. Let's see what's going to happen if I now try to use 2 notes, double stops, instead of full chords. just using top two notes, first two strings and two fingers. And because it doesn't go anywhere, it's one chord. It's resolved. It's something that would be good as a starting or ending point, really. Let's spice it up slightly, and we're gonna use a 6, but just in one position, just at one note at a time, not everything at once. So here I have this A major chord, 5th position, and I'll use this little flavor, the little color note, which is the 6th of the chord, which in this case is on 7th fret, 2nd string. Okay, suddenly we feel like we overuse this idea. It's been going for a while and there's nothing interesting going on. So let's make a little movement out of the realms of major triad. And apart from 6 that we just added, let's bend this 3rd that we have on 6th fret, half step to 4th, but just as a passing note. We don't want to sit there. It's like asking a question, not getting the answer. And there's a resolution, there's our answer. Okay. Okay, here, another position, root position, but in 2nd fret. Second fret, 3rd and 2nd string. Okay, now we're gonna bend 3rd to 4th just as we did, and add 6th that we just discussed a couple of seconds ago. Effectively, what we're doing here is we're playing D major chord, D major root and 3rd of the chord, and then we're moving back to A. So we're moving our chord at this particular situation. So A major triad, D major, A major, D major. Here, another thing. This is A, C sharp, A. So basically, it's like a major 3rd of a chord and doubled octave. So 2nd fret on 3rd string, 2nd fret on 2nd string, and pinky on A. And now I'm going to use my ring finger to bend 3rd string on 4th fret, whole step. Okay. Now, everything that I did here was fueled by chord tones. It was all about chords. There was not a single mention of any scales, of any shapes in there. I was just snubbing to my chord tones. I can think of them as a little magnetic cubes that attract my notes. They want to go there. They don't necessarily have to be there all the time, but just like bending the string, there's a certain resolution point that happens naturally. It just wants to go there naturally. Our ear tends to gravitate towards these things. So far, just chords, right? And I was working on a single chord. There was no movement in there. Now, let's introduce something slightly more difficult, because when the chord is static, we have like an open situation that we know that we can rely on certain ideas that are very safe, that will work with the chord, and we can think of our chord shapes, we can think of our major pentatonics that we can just play till the cows come home and they will fit, right? But the thing is that whenever we introduce chord movement, in the long run, it's good to somehow emphasize it, make it happen in the melody. In other words, let the harmony be like a new context for what we do and see how it works. So, before we put like a proper groove on top of that, sometimes when I have two difficult chords and I want to practice this movement or some sort of progression that I'm not entirely familiar with, I like to do it really, really slowly and without pressure of bar lines going on. So I like to think of it as a ballad or very, very slow vamping chord that will let me explore my ideas, not really focus on phrasing, on rhythm, but just the notes and the movement. So the movement that we're going to have here is going to be 1 to 4. It's common for blues, it's common for rock and roll. In this case, it's going to be from A major to D major. So I'm going to record something that will help me slightly, but it's not going to be rock and groove this time. It's going to be something more gentle. So it's going to be very slow tempo. A major to my D major. Now, let's see. we're gonna start with finding out which notes from previous ideas or anything that comes into mind fit with these chords. So for example, if something worked on A major, how it will relate to the next chord. And now we're not thinking about any theory behind that, or oh yeah, because it's 1 to 4 movements, so these notes stay common, these are moving, this one is gonna be like a tension, this thing will sound wrong. No, nothing of that. Let's just hear. I'm gonna start on the key of A. Let's start with note A. One, two, three, four. Maybe A in different octave. Okay. So this is a common note for both chords, so of course it's going to sound nice. But let's see how it's going to work if we apply maybe some more pleasant articulation than just a plain note. I'm using vibrato. It's a slow tempo, so it's not a nervous vibrato. Now let's try to bend the note from half step below. Okay, let's do something like pre-bend, release, and back. It's gonna sound like that. Okay, pretty good, ain't it? Okay, now let's see what happens to another note, C sharp. Not the best choice, isn't it? Okay, where is the right one? You guessed it? Half step. Okay, let's go back. Step above, just by bending the note closest possible way, and back. And I can add my phrasing and rhythms. Okay, a different octave maybe. Somewhere high up the neck. C sharp to D. Okay, let's see. Another note, E natural. Let's play it here. 9th fret. Let's repeat it. Not as bad as the previous choice, but let's see what's going to happen if we bend it whole step. Yes, it's with the chord, yeah. Okay, so now we can see basic concept that my springboard is, in this case, my root chord, my A major, so it's A, C sharp, E that I just played. I played it in different spots on the neck, but basically what I did there is I tried to accommodate the change that was going on. The chord changed, my line followed from the very spot that it was, it was already there, it was on one chord moved to fourth, so my line morphed again, just like someone turned the little magnetic cube around, and now it's repelling from one side, but it's attracting on the other side. So pretty much same concept. Okay, what I'm gonna do now, let's try to see how far or how close, in this case, is D major triad to A major, how these notes move, why they're so close, which are the common ones, and this will give us kind of idea how to work around them. And there's one more thing, because I tried to join these chords in a very simple way with the closest chord tones, it sounded in a very natural, almost singing quality, because whenever we sing, we want to avoid high interval jumps, right? It's not natural. You know, when we speak, when we sing, our voice modulates in a smooth manner, and this is kind of like what we're looking for if we want to play melody that doesn't sound jagged or disturbing or all over the place. So, for example, if I have my Triad in here, I could go, I can go to my D major on 10th fret, but the thing is that in this particular case, my notes were just like putting a stamp in one spot or the other spot. There was no leading, no common points in there. So it has its place, obviously, absolutely. But if I want to get my smooth vocal quality, I'll possibly want to keep them in the same pool, in the same position, for example, or try to see how close they are. Or maybe build a musical idea that has more common points. It's like leading a listener by the hand, where it gives you one shape and it morphs very smoothly to another shape to accommodate what's there, right? Okay, so let's have a look. This is my A major Triad, and this is my D major Triad. So I can clearly see where these notes are going. So my E from 5th fret goes to 7th fret, whole step, just like we did the band whole step to accommodate the chord. And my C sharp goes to D, just half step. So I did half step bend at first, right? So, and same here. Okay, now in this higher tempo, faster tempo, and rock and roll context, it's exactly the same thing. We'll accommodate to the chord. We're just gonna possibly use some different means to make it rock some more. It doesn't have always to be gentle. So, let's have a look how can we make it work in rock and roll context with all these movements. So I'm gonna make 2 bars of A, 2 bars of D. So inverted chords. What I did there is I went slightly ahead and assumed that my 4 chord has a different quality than usual. So instead of D major, I thought of it as a D7. Okay? That's how it's usually gonna work in blues or rock and roll context, that this chord tends to have this quality, this dominant quality, this tense quality. So the triad below follows the same rules that we just spoke whenever we played this soft piece of nice smooth notes. But when we think of this chord as a D7, it opens up pretty cool trick. And it's a shortcut that is possibly like the first point of interest that we should focus on. And if we spell notes of A major triad, it's A C sharp E. Okay, A C sharp E. It's gonna sound like this. Slightly out of tune, but close enough for rock and roll. Okay. So, A, C sharp, E. Now, when we look at D7 chord, it's D, F sharp, A, C. When we put them in the different order, you can see that we have A and C sharp and A and C natural for D7, which means that there are notes that are very close together, but there is like a half-step movement, just like we had between A and D, but there's a little trick that we can use. Because A major and D, D7 is like having an A minor chord in there hidden, hiding in the bushes, which means that we can use major triad idea on A and minor triad idea on D7. We can play the same phrase that is happy on A and it's set on D. And what I mean by that, okay, D7. Okay, now here's where the change happens. On D7, I'm gonna play C. On A, I'm gonna play C sharp. That's good. 1, 2, C sharp. C bend to C sharp. B bend half step to C. Okay, now straight note without bending. C sharp. C. Okay, now simple idea that uses this little movement. I'm gonna use L blues lick. Okay, so what I did there. It starts just as a major triad. Then I use little chromatic movement to C sharp. Then 5th, 6th. So this is gonna work like A6 chord that we spoke about just a couple of minutes ago. But then the second time around when the chord changes, I'm gonna play C instead of C sharp. And everything else stays the same as it was before. So my A major 6 chord for A, A minor 6, which is pretty much the same thing as D7 in this case. So that's how I can use the same common notes with just this little tiny shift in C sharp to C. Now, even without context, without chords, without backing track, if I play something like that, it's clear that I intended first to be major phrase, second be minor phrase, which usually in this kind of rock and roll thing, when we hear thousands of rock and roll tunes, it usually means one thing. There's a movement from 1 to 4 chord, from A to D. I want to make clear in this case that whenever there is A, I want to make statement. Somehow it's going to be bent or slide or maybe some sort of chromatic movement that will resolve onto the major chord, major triad that's there. And if I want to go to 4 chord, I'm gonna turn I want to make the C note quite clear in there. Okay, what is the C chord in relation to D7? It's 7th. That's what makes D7 a 7. That's why I insisted that we kind of needed this second chord to be D7 and not like a D6 or D major 7 or in major key, and like in an obvious songy song situation, this thing wouldn't have dominant 7 in it, right? It would be different quality of the chord. It wouldn't allow us to use this clever trick. For those guys of you who like pentatonics for some reason, don't judge. I don't judge. Maybe you just like pentatonics. I don't know. Maybe all you have are 2 fingers. Not my thing. Anyway, if you like pentatonics, you can use the same trick. You can use A major pentatonic for A major chord. And you can use A minor pentatonic for D7. Because or if you only talk in minor pentatonics, F sharp minor pentatonic. A minor pentatonic on D7, F sharp minor pentatonic on A. One more time, F sharp minor pentatonic on A, and A minor pentatonic on D. Now, the other trick, A minor pentatonic on A chord, but with C bent to C sharp. So, instead of this note, I'm gonna bend it half step, and this C I'm gonna bend as well, so it's gonna sound like this. Now without bending, because it's D7. So I can play the same pentatonic idea here. Not that I would, but I could. I mean, I will just to demonstrate. I can play the same pentatonic idea on A, an accommodated chord, by bending C to C sharp, and on D I'm gonna leave it just the way it is. It's gonna be A minor pentatonic. So first thing, with bending and without bending, same. I'll try to stick to the same pentatonic ideas. Do D. 1, 2, 3, and actually, it's pretty much exactly the same. It's same mechanics behind it, because pentatonics just happen to cover to cover chord tones. I mean, that's all there is to it. I mean, they have some extras. They have fourth certain passing notes that work for both chords. So they're just like putting those 2 chords one on top of the other, with the exception of note C that works for D7, doesn't necessarily work for A7. I mean, it really depends if that's the sound that you're going for. But nighty night. But other than that, it's pretty much the same concept of just notes following the chords. Okay, let's maybe have a look at certain chord shapes and double stops that will again add extra layer, because now we are getting onto the blurry territory of blue notes. So the idea is that being slightly in between major and minor, it's just another color, another flavor, and it's not wrong or right or anything. It's just another tool that we have at our disposal, which means that having our notes that are bent not exactly up to the chords, and they kind of live in between this C and C sharp. They're not exactly one or the other, and they tend to work on both chords and have this down-home, dirty, very, very natural rootsy sound that is quite essential to get some extra grit onto the lines. And other than that, there are a couple of options that I really like. So, for example, some pretty dirty it's almost there, but not necessarily. It will reach resolution at some point, but like it's not right away, right? What I got in here, it's double stop, 7th fret. So this thing suggests, okay, I'm just a D major triad, not really. So what this thing is, it's D major triad, almost like a D major triad, but actually it's closer to flat 5 or the chord. The bluesiest of them all. And here is a 6 that wants to go to 7 of the chord. So now I'm treating my A chord as A7. So because originally when I have my blues groove going, here, this thing doesn't really imply if the chord is major 6 or maybe dominant 7. Here's my dominant 7, then why not? Now, it's not knowing that this is just another flavor that I have at my disposal, and where it comes from. That in my mind I assume that this is like a different chord quality, and I'm following different chord quality because there is nothing there to point otherwise, and this is a crucial thing. When there is a rhythm player doing something different, so if he plays A6 chord, this 6 chord doesn't necessarily have to clash with our dominant idea of A7 chord. Let's see. I'm gonna put a little backing with A6 chord, because depending on the context is everything in this particular situation. So Okay, so this thing works just fine. Now with the same shape, this is A6. I can make A9 chord, which is basically like A7 with an extra flavor note. So this thing is dominant chord as well. Okay. In this case, we have both A6 and A7 going back and forth. Basically, we think of them as A7, and we can do whatever we like. Almost. But it's just depending on what flavors, what aesthetic we're going. We have all these tools at our disposal. We can play those blue things. We can stay closer to the chords to sound plain or resolved. If we want to sound very conventional, this is possibly something that we're gonna go for. If we want to end a phrase and we want it, you know, to be to sound like it's not really going anywhere further. It's home right now, okay, and we're in. So chord tones, obviously, and chord ideas. We want to build my tension. Blue notes, dirty bends. To introduce some certain movement within the chord. This particular thing works great for D7. For back to my A7 chord or A6, basically one chord, right? Movement to 4 chord and back to 1. And so on and so forth. These are just like very there's like more like an overview of certain basic concepts. It's something that I could go on for the whole night and describe different ways of using this stuff. I just want to possibly say everything at once, and that's why I'm skipping certain things, and I'm minimizing the theoretical side of it to bare minimum, because it's all about listening and applying and pretty much looking what other great players do with that, because again, it's just like language. And theory is more like grammar and alphabet. I mean, if you know the alphabet, you don't know the language. You only have, I mean, you technically have all the letters that are necessary to build the words, but they don't put meaning. So this is like an equivalent of scales. To me, chords have already meaning and movement. Chords are like verbs, and they imply that there is an action going on. So, or inaction. I mean, they can stand still or move forward, or suggest that something's about to happen, that it's going to be some sort of dominant tension that's going to resolve somewhere, or we can have a surprise and that the chord is going to go somewhere else. So these are kind of my thoughts on my very general approach to soloing on rock and roll in very general general overview way. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. The replay is going to be available on my channel, and check out my Telly Tuesday lower fourth lick and that I put this week, and I guess this is gonna be it for this year, and I'm gonna spit out some more content on a regular basis, hopefully. Meanwhile, I'd like to wish all of you Happy New Year, and take care, stay safe, stay well in those mad times, and hoping to see you soon. Nighty night, keep on twanging.